when we look at China, and especially when we look at China the past 30 years, what we've seen is that after like 2 centuries in China of a decline of a world power, because China used to be the world's biggest power in the old dynasties, but it has been declining for 2 centuries, up to the point at somewhere at the end of the 70s when Deng Xiaoping, he decided that it might be a good idea after a long period of communism and a cultural revolution, which basically wreaked havoc on the whole Chinese society. They decided, well, maybe we should open up to the West. Maybe we should start trading with other countries. And this is basically where what they call the Chinese miracle, where it started happening. The country opened up and has since become the factory of the world. Most of the things you use, or a lot of the things you use in daily life, even though it might be a brand from your own country, might be manufactured in China. And that, of course, that happened because of the labor costs were extremely low, and Chinese people were willing to work very hard for very low costs. And that has resulted in this incredible economic boom. Now, if you read the newspapers and if you read the press and magazines, then you often see these news items that China has now become the biggest economy in the world. It depends on how you measure it. Some people will say, well, I measure it in this way and it's already happened. Some people will say it will happen in 5 years. But regardless of when it's going to happen or if it's already happened, it's going to happen. China will become the biggest economy in the world. Well, in this case, you see that the United States was in 2010, according to this estimation, 16% of the total world GDP, and China is about the same. But you see the trend going upwards, and that's where it's heading. Now, one of the most impressive statistics to make this clear is this statistic about the use of concrete, about cement. China, in 3 years, has used more cement than the United States in a whole century. So that sort of makes it clear what is happening in this country. Now, of course, there's a reason for all of this use of cement. And one of the most important reasons is urbanization. Currently, about half of the people in China are living in cities, and they need a place to stay. So what you see if you go to a Chinese city is like concrete jungles. You see apartment flats, just whole parks of apartment flats that all look the same, like 25 stories high with tiny little apartments, sometimes just something like 30 square meters where 2 or 3 people live. So, and that's where all of this concrete goes into. And you will also hear a lot of stories about ghost cities, that there are places like in Ordos where they build a lot of apartments, but nobody's living there, or 2/3 might be actually empty. But this is also because of what's still going to happen, because now 50% of the people in China live in cities. Now, China has about 1.3 billion inhabitants, so that's about 750 million people. But by 2030, this will be 1 billion people. So even more people will be moving out of the countryside into the cities. And what's happening with this trend is once people move from the countryside, where they basically, most of them were farmers, and they move to the cities, you see that their income is rising. Right? It could be that they're migrant workers, that they came from the countryside and they now work in the factories. But it could also be that they start a family. And if they are allowed to stay in the city on a residence permit, because not everybody can stay, really locate to a city legally, then they build up a new future. And there's more jobs, there's more restaurants, there's a whole service industry currently developing in China as well. So this is a trend that is increasing the average income in China. I'm gonna, throughout the presentation, I'm gonna ask you some questions, and if anybody thinks they know the right answer, I'm giving away some of these books. So, so pay attention. So the first question. People got more wealthy. The average income has increased a lot in China. But it's not the same in the whole country. If you look at the map in China, then there's some regions where the average income is still relatively low, especially in the West. And there's some regions, like here and here, where the income is much higher. So does anybody know what the reason is for this? Why the most wealth has been accumulated in the coast? Hong Kong, yeah. And what about? Well, Hong Kong is just a tiny bit of the country. And Hong Kong up till '97 was not even part of China, so it was. Huh?
It's the entrance to China.
Yeah, it's not quite what I'm looking for. Anybody else?
Industrialization.
Sorry?
Industrialization.
Very good. Very good. Yeah, that's correct. It has to do with industrialization. All of the factories that were built to produce all of the goods that were exported to the West are mostly located in this region. So this is where people got rich. The factory bosses got rich, but also the people that went to work in the factory had higher income than in the rest of the country. But you also, and this is for the extremely smart people, you also see places like this. This is not in the coast. I mean, this is Mongolia. So anybody have any idea? Sorry? No. In Inner Mongolia. Mining. Who said mining? Yeah, it's natural resources. What you see is, besides all of these factories in the coast, you see some spots here, where income is also higher. And those are cities. That's the urbanization. That's the capital cities of all of these different provinces. But also you have coal. And Jessica is actually from Datong, which is somewhere here, I think, here. And that's a very coal-rich area. This whole area here is where most of the coal mines are, and where a lot of people got very rich by having coal mines. So it's the factories, it's the capital cities, and it's the natural resources. And all of this has resulted into a situation where, as you can see here, 2013, and we're now here, the division of the income is changing in China. There's a development of a middle class, which just wasn't there like 20 years ago. And as you can see, the expectation is that this middle class, especially the middle income and the affluent people, the really rich people in China, is going to grow. So this has been going on for a while, but unfortunately, it took much longer for Chinese people to become consumers. Because when they got more money, they weren't spending it. They were putting it in the bank. And they were putting it in the bank because of several reasons. One of the most important reasons, there's not a very good social security system in China. So you basically have to take care of yourself. You have to take care, if you get sick, if you cannot work anymore, or if your kids need to go to school, you basically need the money to pay for that. So people were just putting everything in the bank. But now, in the past 5 years, there's been a change where people actually start to spend money. And that's probably one of the things that you must have noticed in your company as well, that one of the things, they start to buy cars. And this is something that is now also stimulated by the Chinese government, because the Chinese government knows that they will no longer in the future be that big factory of the world anymore. Of course, there will still be products that will be produced in China, but you already see companies moving out of China to India, to Bangladesh, to Cambodia, because labor costs in China are getting too high. And they know that this is a new changing thing. So they need to earn more money by going higher up in the value chain and being more innovative. So you see the Chinese government stimulating innovation, but you also see them stimulating consumption by the consumers. Because that's where the continuous growth of the economy needs to come from. Not from exporting, but from selling to their own people. And that's a very, very important thing. In a Western country, you see this normal division of wealth, where young people don't have a lot of money to spend, but the older people, especially before their retirement, they normally have money. They had a career, they build a career, and they have money to spend. It's normally not the young people that have the most money to spend. This is what the picture looks like in China. It's the young people, especially the people in the 20s and 30s, that are making the most money. And there's several reasons for this. So who wants to try? What do you think?
Higher education.
Higher education is, yeah, that's one of them, yeah. And I heard something else.
Yeah, so due to higher education, they're working for European companies. They get better incomes.
Yeah, it's not necessarily European companies. There's basically two things that are going on here. First of all, there's a reason why these people don't earn a lot of money. Now look at their age.
There was no industrialization, it was more farmers.
Yeah, but the most important thing here is that this is the generation that grew up during the Cultural Revolution. This is what you might call the lost generation. They were sent to the countryside to work with farmers instead of studying. So a lot of people in this age group, they have not developed any real skills that they can use. So even if they go to work, they end up doing just low skill work, like working in a restaurant or working in a factory. Whereas these people, one of the things is that they are higher educated, so they have skills. A lot of them also went to study in the United States or in the UK or somewhere else in a Western university. And they are also the ones that try out more, they're more innovative, they're the real entrepreneurs. Whereas these people, during their own youth, they've been told just to keep quiet. And because you didn't, as Jessica said, you didn't want to stand out, especially not in that point of time. So the consumption in the coming years is coming from this group. This is the group that will be buying your products.